Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Faith Dukes. I'm Director of K-12 Programs here at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and we are starting our Career Talk series this summer, where we discuss with researchers, scientists, STEM adjacent professionals, and others how we can be a part of the STEM ecosystem. Today, we are talking about how to make the best of your summer opportunity. And we have three panelists who are going to help us learn about what it's like to be in a mentorship opportunity, work with researchers, and take advantage of their opportunities to work, again, with STEM professionals as they focus on their career. We are a part of Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, which is one of 17 Department of Energy research laboratories across the nation funded by the Department of Energy. Here, as part of the K-12 program, we lead a number of programs that support students to get into a STEM career. So with that being said, I am going to invite our panelist on. Our first panelist is Bianca Sosora. She is a biotechnology major at UC Davis and also a science communicator here at Berkeley Lab. Next is Akira Kamiya, who is an electronics engineering associate at the Advanced Light Source here at Berkeley Lab as well. And a behavioral neuroscience major and data science minor, Sheree Blake, who is an upcoming senior at Northeastern University. So thank you all for joining me today. So I'm going to start off with the way we're going to do this panel is that we're going to have a few questions that I'll ask, but I ask our audience to also put some questions into the chat as we go along, so that we can get as most out of this conversation as possible. But I'd like to start off with, for those of you who have done internships as high school students and undergraduates, could you share what those programs were and how did you find out about them? And I'll start with Bianca, then Sheree, then Akira to answer those questions.
Personally, in high school, I was really lucky to have a proactive biotech teacher, and through her, I got to learn about Berkeley Labs K through 12 internships here, run by Faith. And I have participated in both Sage Camp, which is a 1 week exploratory program where I got to learn about many different STEM fields. And then after that, or actually before that, I participated in Experiences in Research, which gave me a taste of what it was like to work in research professionally. And funnily enough, I've kind of participated in it 4 times now. The first time as an actual intern, and after that, I was kept on, and I'm helped mentor 3 other times.
I'll go next. So I was lucky to be in a college prep program in high school called Upward Bound. It might be at some schools in your district. And through them, I found out about a lot of internships. So I found out about the LBL opportunity where I did the Berkeley Lab Director's Apprenticeship Program my sophomore year, and then junior year, junior and senior year, I did internships at UCSF, and that was really good, like great exposure to science and really kind of set me on the path that I'm on now. And then in college, I've done research internships through at the Harvard Medical University with the SAPER lab. And I found that out through my school's like newsletter. So they kind of just share internship opportunities with students all over Boston, or even if it's like at different schools, and I just apply to that. And then my school has a co-op program, which is a 6-month internship that's kind of worked into your school plan. So my other two experiences, one of which was at a tissue therapeutics biotech company called Satellite Bio, and the other one was at the Center for Ophthalmological Research in France. And I just finished that like 5 days ago. So yeah, those are my internships.
Piggybacking off the previous answer, I think that the newsletters from colleges are, for me, the most important resource that I had when navigating internships. I honestly didn't even know like the word internship until I got into college. And then after that, they're like, "Oh, are you an internship?" And I was like, "What? What is that?" So I had no idea what those even were coming into college. But reading the newsletters from the associated colleges, I figured out that these were opportunities to boost your resume and get some really good experience before going into the workforce. So I would definitely, if I could do it again, I would try to get as much knowledge about that as possible. Another source of information, I think, is professors. If you are in college, just talking to them and asking them about opportunities can really open a lot of doors for you. So those, I know a few friends that have gotten internships directly because of asking professors. So I'd recommend that path too.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And all have had multiple types of internships and opportunities. And thanks, Akira, for definitely professors and those newsletters and comments that come out from different organizations are great ways to learn about how to get into an opportunity. As students get into their opportunities, what should they expect when they first join a research lab or a STEM program or an office for the summer? Are there specific steps that they should take within the first few weeks that will help them have success? And so I'll start back with Akira, then Sheree, then Bianca to answer those questions.
Man, this question is a bit difficult for me because I never actually had an internship before. I never actually had an internship. However, I think it's super important, and I think that it's a great resume boost, like I said previously. What I do know from experience of my other friends is that when you get into an internship, a lot of the times, from what I've heard, you're kind of overwhelmed with you're not knowing what's happening yet. But the most important thing that I could think of is to communicate and network as much as possible. You're there for the experience, and you're there and you're making all these connections with people in the industry already. And I think that's a great source of connections. So just try to talk to as many people as possible would be something that I can suggest.
I think I was next. So, for a lot of my internships, I've worked in labs, and I think I agree completely with what Akira was saying. Like that first week, you're very just like you don't know what's going on. It's a very different environment. Probably like you're just new to the topic that they're researching. You don't know anything yet, and I think it's really important for the first week to kind of like get a really solid understanding of whatever project that they might ask you to work on or whatever you're doing. Like try to get a solid base level understanding of what's happening in the lab because when you kind of lose sight of that later on in your internship, it might not be easy to like, it might feel like you're just doing bench work and doing repetitive things, but it's like, no, it's better to have that understanding. And typically they'll give you like a lot of papers to read or in my experience, I've received like papers to read and kind of get that introductory meeting with your boss, and he tells you like, oh, blah, 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 like this is what we're working on in our lab, why, and everything. And I think it's really important for you to take good notes then. And I think also another thing that happens pretty early on in your internship is that you're going to be doing a lot of training, and it can be very overwhelming at first because especially if it's lab techniques that you've never done before. Those protocols have steps, like a lot of steps, and it's really easy to get a bit confused by it. So I think it's really important to just take good notes during that and then like review your notes after and maybe write up your own protocol, or if you're starting to notice the lab might not be super organized in that way, like you want to prepare yourself to be able to do these experiments later when they ask you to do it on your own. And yeah.
Similar to the other answers, it can be very overwhelming to start an internship, especially if it's your first one. So I really suggest that you expect to have fun and learn and really try to enjoy it as much as possible because it is kind of a lot to start out, but it can be really rewarding to just learn and have fun during the process. And I also suggest to get an overall understanding of the research at the lab, even the research that's maybe not directly related to your project, but just to get a preliminary understanding so you can connect to possibly all other researchers who are doing that research too and learning about it and how it fits within the field. And I think depending on the freedom of your project, you can also ask to shift projects in a direction that suits you most. Not most projects you can't do that, but in some internships, like here at Berkeley Lab, you can ask for more resources and how you can possibly learn more about things you're more passionate about too. And you do want to make something you're proud of by the end. So definitely make sure to check in with your mentors and don't be afraid to ask for guidance. I feel like that's something that some people might be intimidated by or not as willing to do over the course of their internship, but make sure you do check in when you do need help. and also ask about career paths when you're first starting out, because I think that really helped me personally in high school. And just to ask about career paths, it helped inform and inspire me on my own journey.
Awesome. And to give more context, Bianca and Akira, could you talk about the work that you do here at Berkeley Lab? And Sheree, could you talk about where you're expecting to go next in your, you're doing all of these internships. What are you thinking about post-college? So Bianca and Akira, starting with you, and then Sheree, about next steps.
Sorry, did you say starting with Akira?
Bianca, it's
Okay.
just, oh, yeah. Bianca, if you want to go ahead and share what you're doing in school and then what you do here at Berkeley Lab as a student assistant.
In school, I'm learning about biotechnology as my major. It's really fun and very interesting, a new field. And here at Berkeley Lab, I am a science communicator, but I'm doing illustration and animation and also video editing. I do like a variety of different things, but I try and communicate the research here at the lab to the general audience of like regular people.
It's fascinating stuff. At the lab, my title is Electronics Engineering Associate, and I graduated from UC Davis with an electrical engineering degree. At the lab, I work at the Advanced Light Source, which is a particle accelerator that basically spits out X-rays, and scientists from all over the world use those X-rays to study things and try to further humanity's knowledge in science. I think it's kind of cool. And we have a lot of interns as well, and I've talked with a lot of them. So although I don't have direct internship experience, I do have experience managing interns, and I think it's kind of fun.
And so for me, I've done a lot of internships that are mostly like science research based, so majoring in behavioral neuroscience, and typically my internships are somewhat involved in that or literally not involved with neuroscience at all. But just focused a lot on research and getting those technical skills down. So after college, I hope to pursue a PhD in neuroscience. So I'm currently just trying to work on projects in the next semesters that I finish college that are focused on neuroscience and potentially doing a thesis project that with a lab that I've worked with previously.
Great. Thanks everybody for doing so much great work that's helping our scientific industry, especially the work here at the lab, as well as future neuroscience work that we hope to see from you, Sheree. Getting back to internships. So Akira, you thinking about this as a mentor, internships can be a short amount of time. How do you manage expectations with your intern in the project that they have been assigned? Have you witnessed early mistakes by others or made yourself that you were able to course correct? And Bianca and Sheree, as mentees, and interns, have you seen how do you manage a short internship or time with people, and what are some early mistakes that you have been able to course correct? So Kira, we'll start with you as a mentor side of things, and then Bianca and Sheree as interns.
So when I was starting out my college career, the advice that I got that I stick with to this day is to manage your managers. And what I mean by that is be proactive as possible. What I find that's really impressive when I have interns are when they give me updates without me asking for them, it really shows that they're on top of their tasks and that they are willing and capable and self-driven almost. So I would really stress that, please, as much as you can, try to be proactive. This way you are in charge of the conversation and you're allowing them to see how much you're doing. I think that was really helpful for me. And as far as the mistakes that I've witnessed or made myself, there's a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is the importance of communication and the importance of empathy. In other words, being able to put yourself in your mentor's shoes if you're a mentee, understanding the problems that they have and how to put yourself frame yourself in a way that makes you the solution almost. That might not be applicable specifically to Berkeley Lab, but just overall in general. If you can be the problem solver, I feel like that's always a good thing. So those are some advice that I would give for that.
I definitely want to echo Akira's answer because communication is like one of the most important things I've learned during projects. Mentors can be very busy people with many things on their mind, and maybe they do want to provide more for you or more resources for you, but they don't really know what exactly you need yet because not all mentors are masters at being mentors, right? So you should really make sure that expectations are clear and the same between the two of you. And I've learned the importance of that the hard way. Like Akira, I've also made many mistakes. And it's kind of on the extreme end with visual science communication because you're kind of trying to read their mind on what they really want visually. And while your hard work may follow their expectations verbally and written down to a T and even exceed what they said that they wanted, it might not be what they have envisioned in their head. Which is not one of the best moments to be in. But this can definitely be prevented by asking for more questions and asking for examples of what they want early on in the project, as well as consistent communications, as well as progress updates are very helpful in getting the project to where you want it to be at the end and where they want it to be at the end. And another thing is to understand the timeline of the project so you can make the most of your time. I think it's a great thing to know how flexible your work will be, all your responsibilities, and to make a very loose plan of that over the course of the internship. And it's really good to factor in learning pains into the schedule. If you think something will take you longer to get to a state you're happy with or just to get used to, then I'd suggest to plan more time for it. And if it ends up while you're doing it, you do need more time than planned, even if you plan more time, just communicate why with your mentor and I think things will be all right.
To jump off of what Bianca was saying, I think creating a schedule to manage your expectations with whoever you're working with is super important. Um, I found that one issue that I noticed with some of my friends or other people who are doing internships is that they can feel like they've gone for weeks and they felt like they haven't done anything. Like they're maybe just not getting enough work, or their mentor doesn't realize that the work they're giving them isn't as time consuming as they thought. And I think it's really important to kind of go in and set an initial plan with your mentor, but also meet weekly or bi-weekly or however frequently with your mentor and continue to adjust that plan for whatever pace you're going at throughout the rest of your internship. It can be so easy to just feel like you can't speak up about things, or that things are just supposed to be going this way and you're not supposed to be doing this much work. But I can speak from personal experience when I know how boring it is to just sit there and stare at your computer all day and try to like find imaginary work to do around the lab. And it's so easy. It's just really easy to correct that by starting out with like a very loose, like week by week plan, and just set some rough ideas and expectations of what you're going to do, and then revisit that every few weeks. And then another thing that I've noticed, a lot of friends have just spoken about their internship experience is that they sometimes feel a lot of pressure from either their mentors or themselves to perform perfectly at their internship, or just they might feel like they're not working hard enough or things like that. And I think it's really important to not put that negative pressure on yourself. I don't think no pressure is, I don't think like all pressure is bad. However, it's really easy to kind of get in this mindset that you aren't doing well enough. And most of the times that's not the case. You might just be under a lot of stress and it's a lot of work. And it is really hard to figure out how to do research that everybody else has been doing their entire life, or not their entire life, but like for years in like 10 to 12 weeks. So give yourself that grace and just communicate with your mentor when you realize things aren't going as well as you would want them to be. And just they will so easily comfort you and reassure you in the fact that it is supposed to be hard. Like it makes sense that it's hard. It might, everybody else might seem like they're doing it really easily. They've also been doing this for years. So it's not a very fair comparison between you and them. So just try to not put too much pressure on yourself and just keep a level head and remember that you did just get there and things are going to be hard to start, but with time it'll get better and you'll definitely notice a difference from the first week to the last week of how your performance does throughout your internship.
Thank you. Great round of answers from everybody. Communication, writing things down, creating a schedule. keeping those lines of communication specifically open, especially when you're either getting too much work, you're confused, you're at a roadblock. Those are all super important things to remember as a part of your internship. I want to remind the audience that you all can start to write in questions as well. This is open to you in time for you all to ask any questions of our panelists. We'll keep going with our next question though. What advice would you give to students who want to sustain their relationship with mentors and or administrators post-program, or say a former supervisor or boss? You know, how have you implemented different ways in which to keep in contact with people, especially if you want to maybe come back to them and use have them provide a reference or, you know, support you in the future. So Sheree, I'm going to let you start first with that question, and then Akira, and then Bianca.
I'm a really big fan of sending check-in emails. So like literally ask Faith like once a year or like twice a year or a little bit over a year. I'm a bit behind on my emails right now, but just sending emails annually to kind of update the people that you've worked with. So your mentors, your advisors, supervisors from your job, anyone that really like made an impact on you, just send them an email literally outlining what you've been doing for the past year. Like, oh, I finished up in classes. It was hard. It was good. I did this internship. It was hard. It was bad. All this stuff. Throw in some anecdotes in, like, oh, I think I told people the first time I went skiing that was really cool. Just remind them that you exist and that you are like doing well in your path, or even if you're not doing well in your path, like you could always reach out to them and seek advice. And I think that's really important because I was just notified early on. One of my advisors told me it's really uncomfortable, or not uncomfortable, but it's really not the best when students will like ghost you for 4 to 5 years or however long, and then reach out like, oh, remember I did this with you? Like, could you write me a letter of recommendation? Like, yes, they might write a letter of recommendation, but they have no idea what you've been up to for that duration of time that you ghosted them. So it's a very awkward situation to kind of like reach back into that relationship and get a letter of rec or just a referral or even advice. So I think it's really important to kind of keep that line of communication open and just send a quick email, nothing crazy, and just let them know that you're here, you're doing well, you're still going through your path, and you appreciate their help at whatever point they told you. And another thing that's also really good is LinkedIn. So, you know, keep your LinkedIn up to date. I don't think that you need to write on it all the time, but I think it's really important to like scroll through, you know, stay up to date on keep the people in your network up to date on what you're doing, and also in turn you will get up to date on what they're doing. It's really important to just kind of keep that I don't know what the word is, but like that stream of information flowing between you two. And then emails are where you can connect a little bit more on a personal level and like just let them know something about you. Yeah.
Sorry, was I next or was that Bianca? Me? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Let's see. I feel like Shara covered most of what I was going to say, but I think to add on to all of that great advice, one thing that I personally like to do when starting my relationships with mentors and whatnot is, and this one's kind of a cheat, I like to take selfies with people at events, and that way it gives me a picture of me and the person, and then later on, you know, maybe a week later, a little email with a selfie included, like, hey, no, I had a great time. Hope to get to catch up more. This is, in my opinion, a great way to start the conversations, and they don't have to be conversations, but it's just a great way to break the ice, in my opinion. Um, and something else that I do similar is to send yearly emails and just kind of keep in touch. They're at the end of the day, these are all people. And I feel like that was the biggest switch for me coming from high school into college, was realizing everyone's just a person, right? And if you want to get to be friends with someone, you have to talk to them, you have to communicate with them. So just keeping that line of communication open, whether that be, it doesn't have to be very consistent, but I think as long as you continue that communication, that's what's important.
I think most of what I was going to say was also covered. It's really important to be keeping that line of communication open. So I think I'll try and give you some advice since you guys are just starting now in your internships. I think it's good to get to know them all in the program. Like Kira said, mentors are people just like you. They have their own interests and dimensions. I know it's kind of scary. These mentors seem like professionals that are like far away from you, but they can really just be your friend too. And I'm friends with my mentor, at least I think so. She's really nice to me. It's important to maintain professionalism, but don't be afraid. Just people. During your internship, I suggest you just take it seriously, give it your best, and make the most of it. And I think you'll leave a good impression on your mentor. Resources that are there are provided for you so you can grow professionally. And it's a waste if you don't use them when you can. Personally, I went to every networking lunch in ENR and I made the most of my Sage Camp and pushed myself with my projects creatively. And I think that's kind of why Faith asked me to be here. I made most of all of those resources, and that kind of left an impression. I think she also asked me to panel for some other things too, which was really fun. And like they said, it's great to keep in touch. Mentors love to hear how you've grown and all of your accomplishments after the fact. And in a way, part of the work kind of lives on in you. And most want to see you succeed. So it's really fun to see where people have gone and what colleges they've gotten into. So don't be afraid to leave those check-in emails, like Shiara said.
Okay, so from our audience, what is the most important or useful skill that you have gained through an internship? And so it's Sheree and then Bianca. I'll have you answer that one.
I think my most important skill has to be like, wait, sorry, I was ready. I think professional communication. I think with internships, I really take them as it is a job. It's one of your first exposures to working, but like, I mean, taking it seriously in the way where don't simplify yourself to being just an intern. Like, you are still an employee, and it kind of sets you up to figure out how to navigate these professional relationships, because everybody talks about how there's like work culture and you need to be able to navigate that. And I think a lot of my internships have prepared me in ways to say no to, or not just to say no, but also to communicate effectively with people that I'm working with. So if I feel like there's a lot that's going on, like they want me to do a lot, the expectations are a bit high, and I'm not sure if I can meet them. I think I've learned very well how to communicate that to my employer and kind of redirect the workload and see if there's a way that we can just set a realistic expectation. And it also has taught me how to advocate for myself. So if I realize that I'm not doing as much as that I'd like to be, or there's some more that I want out of this internship, I've gotten a lot better at asking for it, because they can't read your mind at the end of the day. And I feel like a lot of times students might have this misconception that just because they're an intern, they need to sit and wait and be told what to do and how to do it and everything like that. But you also do have a voice, and you can ask for the things that you want to try doing. Just put the idea out there, talk to your talk to your supervisors, and really advocate for yourself. Just set up a good line of communication, and that will prepare you for your jobs in the future when you actually like get into full-time work and professional settings, and even outside of professional work settings, in just any area where you need to advocate for yourself as well.
That's a really important skill to have. And for me personally, I think one of the most important skills that I've gained is time management and just managing myself and setting expectations for myself, what's reasonable within the time frame, what can I possibly achieve, and like how to adjust the parameters of my project and being able to communicate that with whoever requested it from me. Um, and it's really important to be able to like know yourself and know what you're capable of, and not it's good to set ambitions for yourself and be able to achieve more, and it's good to strive for that, but it's also good to be realistic with what you can achieve in a certain time frame.
Akira, if you want to add anything else to that, like what are the best in work in general? What are some things that you've learned, within a year of joining Berkeley Lab, right? So what have you learned that have been some skills that you've taken away from starting a new position?
Right. They've covered so much good stuff. I think for me, one of the most important skills that I've learned is um I guess time management would be one of them. It's as you join the workforce or as you become an intern and have a lot of projects piled on top of you, it can quickly become overwhelming if you don't have a way to block out certain times to do certain things. And along with what was said previously, like communicating how much time each of these things take, I think is really, really important because like they don't really know sometimes the work that they're giving you. And it's important to say, hey, this is taking me this long so far, and I feel like it'll take X amount of time for me to finish this task. And just being really clear about that has helped me tremendously. And I think it's reflected well with my mentors. And when I have interns that kind of give me updates on their end, then I know, oh, the time that I estimated was way too much, or maybe I gave them too little time to do what they need to do. So time management, I'd say, is a really important skill to have.
Awesome. And I'll follow back up with you because someone wrote in our panel or chat box, what recommendations do you have for documenting your work during either internship or work? So, starting with Akira, how do you document the work that you've done, especially when you're communicating with your managers? Okay, I can accomplish this. What are the ways that you share with them?
So this one I learned last year, and it's helped me like a lot because right now there's what's called PMPs, and it's performance reviews, and it depends on which company you go into or what kind of work environment you're in. But sometimes once a year, you have to kind of evaluate the entirety of that year and present yourself to your supervisor and say, okay, this is what I've done. And for me, what's been really, really helpful for that and a way to document it is sending a weekly email, either at the beginning or the end of the week, outlining the plans outlining this is what I've done, this is what I plan to do. And just that simple email and sending it to your supervisor for me has been very helpful because it gives me a timeline. I can look back at the end of the year, review the email chain, and just see, okay, January I did this, February I did this, and these are the goals that I made for myself, and these are the expectations. And I met some of them, I did meet some of them, things of that nature. I feel like that has really, really helped for me.
Bianca, do you want to share and then Sheree?
Sure. I do basically the same thing as Akira, but I do it through a Zoom meeting with my mentor. And I also, since I do visual work, I keep a little Google Drive folder that I have shared with her of all my past work so she can enjoy that in school together. But yeah, just documenting that. And with my intern that I'm working right now with in UNR, I have like a folder of Google Docs where I keep the weekly tasks of the entire internship. And I think we also have like expectations and different things that she needs completed and resources she can have. And she can work within all of those docs, and I can see and experience all her work for myself there.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I do pretty much the same thing. Every week I check in with my mentor. We have a weekly meeting typically, and I just go over what I was able to do last week and what we can do in the following week. And I kind of keep all of that organized on my Notion, my personal Notion for my lab, just to make sure that like I can go back and see like, oh, okay, this experiment was supposed to get done, didn't get done. Now we could move it back. And really, it really helps just understanding where you are within your schedule and your timeline of doing things. And it's like Akira said, it's a very tangible way to say like, oh, this is the work I've been doing for however long this internship is, because I know I have a really bad memory. So I would just immediately forget when sometimes my boss is like, oh, what have you been up to? What did you do like last month? I don't know, but I can check. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely the writing it down and keeping it in a document and something you can come back to. That's great. Someone said, and this is for anyone who wants to answer, how do you get more exposed to more internships that are related to your interest?
I would like to answer this. So the way that I've done this is through connecting with people. So I've done a lot of internships in biotech and research, but maybe not specific to neuroscience. And through all of those internships, I've been grateful for those experiences because it's really helped give me that lab background that I wanted. And it's just filling in the lines of like, oh, this is a way that you can do research. Let me explore that and see what I can do with it and how I can apply it to neuroscience. But when it comes to getting more specific and targeted internships, I understand the sentiment that it is a little bit difficult because you might not be placed in a lab with a topic that you're super interested in. And I think what you should do is honestly like put the idea out there within that lab that like, oh, in the future you're looking to for internships that can that are more focused towards whatever topic you want to focus on. And you would be surprised how many people know each other and they can recommend you for a lab that they are aware of that has your interests and things like that. And that's a much easier way to get an internship for the next year or for the fall or whenever that would align more with what you want to research. So you can explore that path and figure out if you like it or not.
Anyone else want to add to finding things that you're interested in and how you might approach?
I have a little suggestion, perhaps. It feels weird to suggest things given that I don't really have any internship experience. However, one thing that I can speak to, and one thing that's helped me in my career so far is, I'm kind of piggybacking off of Sheree's answer, by talking to people, first of all, but also whenever you're in the work environment, a lot of the times there are people around you, at least that's the case for me, where they are doing something completely different from what you're doing and completely in a different field from what you're doing. And for me, I like to go up and ask them, like, hey, what are you up to? Like, what's going on here? There's a huge magnet that's just you're calibrating, like, what's happening here? And this, for me, exposes me to a lot of different fields, and it allows me to get to know people of different fields. And if I'm interested in that, I let them know, like, hey, if you guys ever have an opportunity for me to work in this project, let me know because I would love to help out. Something along those lines. And just by stating your interests, it opens a lot of doors, surprisingly, just by talking about it. So that's my advice.
So, Bianca, I'll start with you on the next question. Do you have any advice on how to balance your personal goals for your internship or your work that you do with your goals that you have for the group that you're working with? You're working with a bunch of people and scientists, and they all have a certain goal. But how do you balance that with your own personal goals? And Sheree and Akira, I'll have you answer that as well.
That is a very interesting question because it's like something so integral to what I do. Because my work is very art based, right? So I have a vision of whatever they want me to do, right? And then they have their own vision, and getting those to merge together and work beautifully is kind of like something you have to learn how to get used to, right? Because you might want to do your art in one way when they want another specific thing. So what I've learned is just to like I've learned that I've been able to grow my skills even if I'm not doing exactly what I personally want to draw or what I want to animate, and I've been able to maintain that. And even if it's not like something that I'm entirely, this is what I want to do art wise, it's very interesting and it grows my experience and my skills because I'm doing something that I didn't want to do necessarily, but actually it's really fun to try and get your own skills to work in different other contexts. And I've been able to build my own art skills gradually, even if it's not exactly the same exact thing that I wanted to do. And it actually has helped diversify my skills and help build me creatively. I don't know if that answered the question, but
Definitely agree with what Bianca was saying. I think it's really important to be adaptable and just appreciate the experiences that you are getting and the things that you are fulfilling. And I think another way that you could also make sure that your personal goals are still getting fulfilled is by mentioning it again. So I know a lot of times when you go into an internship, your first meeting with your boss is super introductory, and they'll probably ask you like, oh, what do you want to get out of this internship? And students might say their personal goals then, but in the future they realize they're not doing as much of what they want to do, and that kind of personal goal might have been forgotten by their boss. I think it's a really easy thing to do to just remind them. So it's not, there's no offense involved in this, and I understand it can be a bit disheartening if they have forgotten for a bit. But genuinely, I think just putting the idea back out there is a really big step, because it reminds them like, oh, okay, this student wants to focus more on this. Let me see if they have anything, if I have anything to give them to do. So for me, one of my personal goals for my most recent internship was I wanted to get more data science experience. So I've never really applied data science to biology science direction of work. So I was like, oh, okay. I was in the beginning of my internship, I was like, oh, I have coding experience. I want to try and expand on that. If you have any work that you could give me, I'd really appreciate that. And then like 2 months later, because this internship was 6 months long, so 2 months later, I reminded my boss about that. And then he was like, oh, actually, we have all this data that takes us hours to analyze, because it's just a lot of copying and pasting. Can you help us and create a script that does the analysis for that? And I was like, okay, perfect. So I still was able to fulfill my personal goal. I got to apply a lot of the things I learned in class to my job, and that in itself is so hard to do. But I was so grateful for that experience, because it does reaffirm to me that I like coding and I like working with data. And especially when it's towards like biology or some life science, that feeling like I can really do stuff with it. I have a better grasp of what I'm doing with it. So I think that's really important, just to remind them. It can be so easily overlooked, but you should try it.
Yeah, and piggybacking off the Sheray's answer, I feel like talking is always the key to life in general, communicating. Um, Specifically though, for me, I guess prop to the questionnaire person, because I didn't really have any personal goals per se coming out of high school. I just wanted to graduate. Like that was the main goal, was just to get the degree. And and so the fact that you're even looking for that is amazing. I think also what's really important to know is that it's hard to change people. It's hard to try to shift directions, because there's a task that they're trying to solve, right? And there's like money involved, there's payments, and there's time. And so sometimes, at least for me, my outlook was, if I change my own perception of things, that helps me a lot. And I'll give an example. In my first job, my goal was to try to get as much hands-on electrical engineering experience as possible. But the goal of the company was to create a product and to sell that product. And so I ended up kind of pushing paperwork around, if that makes sense. And I was really, really frustrated for the initial few months, because I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do. And I had talked to my supervisor, and I let them know, like, this isn't really the path that I'm trying to go down. But at the end of the day, they needed a job to fill. So I was like, okay. And I changed my goal. Instead of me trying to get more hands-on experience, I learned how to basically I like reframed my mentality, and I was like, okay, well, here, what am I learning? I'm learning how to talk to people. I'm learning how to navigate the work environment. I'm also learning how to manipulate data on Excel and whatnot. So there's things you could take away, even if it doesn't fit your personal goal. It could fit your long-term future goals, because I know that my experience here will help me down the road. And ultimately, I ended up leaving my job for another job, but I gained a lot of experience that I wasn't able to gain until I made that mindset shift. And then I fully was passionate and driven in that job. So that's my answer.
Awesome. Akira, I think you were answering our next question, which was, how did you first start out? Was your first experience with your first internship or job experience? So you answered that, but for Bianca and Sheree, if you want to talk about what was your first experience doing an internship or a job, and if you'd like to share what you learned from that.
Um, like I said before, I started off just learning what JBay does. I don't think I said I work at JBay, but that's where I work at. Um, and learning about biomanufacturing and the general research that happens on there. It's really good to get comfortable and used to what science is happening there. And in my first job, or my first internship, I had a lot of freedom. So I got to decide what I wanted to do. And I used the information I used from my personal little research about what JBay does. And I created my own project. And I was a little proactive about it, putting my own skills into that. I made a little intro animation for JBay. And I tried out new skills that I had never done before creatively. And it's kind of a unique experience because I kind of got to choose my own project, but that's what I did. I tried to make most of what I could offer them that was unique and leave some sort of impression that way.
One of my first internships was with the Grade Lab at UCSF, and that was like a very great but scary internship to start out with because it was super just into the research. The research that they were doing was very confusing for like a high school student. I barely knew what was going on, to be really honest. But I think it was really important because I really got to understand the structure of a lab and how they complete research projects, how they check in with one another, and just being in that environment solidified that I want to pursue research. And I think I did like a 2-month internship with them over the summer. And then after that, I actually decided to go back in the fall. I can't remember the timeline exactly, but I pursued another project with them. And that was great because I was better able to understand what we were actually doing in the lab. And I felt like the research that I was doing had a better impact because I was in high school. I'm regarding like background knowledge wise, barely knew anything. But over time, it was so much easier for me to understand the project and really make a meaningful contribution to that lab. So I think that first experience was just like, oh, okay, do you even like this? I think that's a very important question that you should be asking yourself. Do you even like what you're doing? Because although it might like in your head, you might think it's really great, but once you get there, that might change really quickly. And that's okay. You can go into an experience and realize that you don't actually like the research that you're doing or whatever job you're doing. And I think it's just really important to get that idea of, oh, okay, I want to stick with this or I don't. And you can choose your next internship accordingly from that experience.
Thank you so much for all of the advice and thinking through. And I love always to say that internships and experiences, especially during the summertime, are opportunities to say, I either really love this or I don't like it. There's something else, but always taking advantage of the opportunity still, not, checking out just because all of a sudden you don't like it, but actually saying, okay, what are the things that I do like in this? And so the next time I do something, I can pick something that might align more with what my passions are, what my strengths are. So another question that we're going to share, and then we're going to get to the last question of the session are there any specific requirements a student should keep in mind as they are applying to internships at any level or a job, as they're thinking about this? What are some of the things that you take into consideration when you're starting to look towards, fall or summer opportunities for internships or Akira, as you were looking for jobs, what are the things that you had in mind that were important to you in pursuing a job? So Bianca, I'll start with you and then Sherry and then Akira.
I think it's a great thing if you're able to understand what they do at the place you're applying to before you apply to them. I know some people just apply like, oh, there's an application here, I'll just send in my resume, but it's good to do some preliminary research about where you're applying to and also to tailor your application specifically to that place. So for example, if you have a cover letter, maybe like indicating why you're specifically interested in the research they're doing there is really important. And I think we've already said this a lot, but make connections before applying, and maybe you'll be able to get into an opportunity that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise beforehand. And always, here's another thing, always send a post thank you email after interviews. That really shows you care. I don't think a lot of people do this, but it's something that I've picked up from my biotech teacher, just to say, oh, thank you. And then it reminds them that you exist and that they should consider you. And also don't reject yourself before any other place does with college, with internships, with jobs. A lot of people don't apply to some things because they think, oh, I'm not qualified enough. Oh, they're not going to accept me. So why even bother? But while it's good to be realistic with expectations, you never know what will happen, right? So never let your perception of you stop yourself. And also don't give up. It takes a really long time for a lot of people to actually get into a position. And also don't take it personally when you get rejected. Just keep applying and trying to improve upon your applications as you go along. And I'm sure it'll be all right.
I think also during your interview process, a thing that I really like to keep in mind that I also learned from my biotechnology teacher is that you are also interviewing them. So yes, you are the interviewee. They are talking to you and they want to figure out what you like, or what you're like, but you also want to figure out what they're like and what the lab environment is like. And in my interviews, I always ask like, what's the culture of the lab? And this is also a good time to ask what their expectations of you are, because you'll kind of get a sense for the type of work that you might be doing. Because although it might say one thing in the job description, I feel like typically that's a very blanket idea of the actual job. And when you get into the interview, you can kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of what will actually be happening during your internship. But just getting a good idea of the people that you're going to be working for is really important, because you can kind of feel the vibes in the interview, and you might notice that this is just not maybe this is maybe somewhere that I don't want to work. So even if they do give you the offer you the internship, you might choose another internship over that one because of that interview. So you are also interviewing them. Keep that in mind. Really helpful.
Let's see. For me, when I was applying to jobs, I struggled quite a bit, and I think it's because I didn't do the internships, so props to y'all. But one thing for me was I just wanted my foot in the door, so I kind of scattershotted approach, and I'm not sure if I'd recommend that, because it definitely helps now that I'm on the other side and actually interviewing people. It helps when I can see that they put a lot of time and effort into the resume and they kind of tailored it for things that we're looking for. Um, and I also really like it when I get a little thank you email. I'm like, oh, okay, they care about me, you know? So that feels nice on the receiving end for sure. Um, I think to kind of reiterate what Bianca was saying, I wish I applied to more things that I thought I wasn't prepared for. For example, a lot of the time starting out after college, there's a lot of job requirements to say 3 years of experience. And I never applied to those because I was like, oh, I'm fresh out of college. I don't have the experience yet. A lot of my friends did, and they got the positions. I was like, what? You could do that? You're like, yeah, why would you not just put the opportunity there? So I think try and knock as on many doors as possible because one might open. Yeah.
Awesome. All great advice. Especially don't say no to yourself. Like I love Bianca that she said that. Don't say no to yourself before someone else does. The worst, I mean, sometimes the worst somebody can say is yes, actually. And then you got to figure out how you're going to do the job or what you're going to do. So go ahead and apply. Okay, so we're going to do our last question of today. And that question is, if you could go back to 17 or 18 as you're starting back over and embarking on going off to college, what advice would you give to yourself? So start back with Akira, then Bianca, and then finish with Shrey.
If I could start back when I was 17, the advice that I would give myself is, and this might seem kind of counterintuitive, but don't put too much pressure on yourself and enjoy life as it is. I think when I was really stressed that I didn't have any goals in life because I was like, everyone else around me has figured it out. I should be doing all these things and I'm not really certain as to what I'm doing yet. But I think the biggest thing that we have at a young age is time. That is the most valuable commodity, right? And so you have time to figure things out. And it's always good to get a head start, but it's okay to kind of learn who you are as well. So I wish that I personally had taken more time during my college years to really enjoy college per se, because life happens and you only get that opportunity once. I do think it's great to continue improving yourself, but Also take a look around, be a little bit more introspective, and I feel like that would help me. That would have helped me a lot more if I reflected a little bit.
I also wish I had used my time a little more efficiently to better myself and also what I was doing. I spent a lot of it on work and school and studying, but I really wish that I had taken some more time to myself to actively just be with myself, not on my phone, not on YouTube, not whatever, right? Because when you're on your phone or social media, you're not really with yourself. You're not really introspecting. You're not really talking to yourself. You're just, I don't know, turning your brain off of it sometimes. But actually getting the time to talk with yourself is really important.
My advice to myself would be to go at the pace that is good for you. So I know it's very easy to compare yourself to everybody else and what they're doing and how you might think you're falling behind. But truly, that is not what everybody else is doing is not a reflection on you. Sometimes you just need to go at the pace that you want to go to get to your career path. Some people can grind out like 5 internships or 3 internships in a year, and some people only want to do 1 or 0 this year because they just need to take their time, and that's okay. Taking your time is not a bad thing. It gives you time to reflect on who you are, what you like, and figuring out those aspects first are really important, and they set you up to be in situations that you want to be in. So, yeah, don't compare yourself to anybody else. Just go at your own pace.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those final words of, going at your own pace, making sure you're taking time for yourself, not saying, no to yourself and applying as much as possible. So, great job, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today on our panel. And I want to thank our attendees for their wonderful questions. And so this is the conclusion of our first summer career talk of the year and our as a part of our K-12 internship program. So thank you all so much and have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.